Hi and welcome to video 5 of 5 in my serve course. I'd like to kick today's video off by just simply saying thank you for joining me throughout this course. I really hope that all 5 videos have been really helpful to you and they've helped your understanding and being able to see exactly what happens in a high level serve, the pros specifically. And I've been really excited to hear from several of you that your serves have already gotten better. It's really cool that you've gotten this new information, a couple things here and there that you didn't know before. You've implemented them into your own serve, and now you're already seeing better results. That's what it's all about. And I've been just really excited to go through this whole process and see the feedback. That's the other thing. If you've left comments or questions, etc., below each of the videos, thank you so much. It really means a lot to me, and it's great to hear that you all appreciate the time and the effort that went into making this course. So thank you for your time and for going through it. It's really been a lot of fun for me. Now, in today's video, we're going to be talking about the follow-through. This is the final piece of the puzzle when it comes to creating a high-quality service motion. We're going to be talking about things such as pronation and also a phrase that is probably my least favorite phrase when it comes to technique in tennis, and that is wrist snap. You're going to find out why I really dislike that phrase, and we're going to be talking about other things having to do with the follow-through as well. Let's go ahead and get right to it. Here we go. Serve follow-through starting right now. It might seem like it's not super important what occurs after the point of contact in your service motion, but nothing could be further from the truth. It's absolutely important that the follow-through part of your service motion is fundamentally sound and correct. And believe it or not, what occurs after the point of contact actually does make a big difference and could mean the difference between being successful and unsuccessful in your serving endeavors as you continue to try to improve that extremely important part of your tennis game. So here, as with the other videos in this course, we're going to be taking a look at some good examples from professional players. I took this footage at Cincinnati this past year, and obviously really good examples from these players. And the first technical element that we're going to talk about is probably, in my opinion, the #1 misconception that recreational tennis enthusiasts have about the serve and about serve technique. And that has to do with the phrase wrist snap. And I want to go on record as saying that I hate that phrase. In all of tennis, that is probably my least favorite phrase because it's not accurate at all. It's not what actually occurs. And when recreational players talk about wrist snap, what they're referring to would be the hinging forward of the hand at the wrist. If you can imagine a basketball player releasing a shot, you know how basketball players will shoot, their fingers roll underneath the basketball, and then their hand and wrist flexes forwards and hinges forwards, and they kind of hold that follow-through position with their hand flexed forwards. That's called wrist flexion, when the hand and wrist flex or hinge forwards at the wrist. And that does not occur when you watch high-level players hit serves, or obviously professional players are high-level tennis players, but when you watch even a 4-5 or a 5-0 player with a good, solid fundamental serve, you won't see any wrist flexion either. Now, the racket head does snap, it does release, but it's not due to the wrist. And that's what we're going to talk about first. It's due to the forearm in what's called pronation, which is the inward rotation of your forearm, which turns your palm of your hand. I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit. So here, let's go back a couple of frames here on Andy Murray's serve, and we're going to take a look at a couple of positions. In previous videos in this course, I talked about the importance of the racket coming up on edge, and that is really important. And now we're going to talk about why. You'll also notice that his palm, if he were to open his hand up at this point in the service motion, his palm would be facing to the left as well, along with his racket face. This shows us, by the way, that he has a continental grip, essentially a neutral grip with his palm in line with his racket face. Now, from here moving forwards, obviously, he's going to turn his racket before he makes contact. Otherwise, he would edge, he would kind of knife edge the ball with the edge of his racket frame. And he obviously doesn't want to do that. So he's going to make a full 90-degree turn with his palm and with his racket face to face towards his target as he makes contact. And again, as we talked about in previous video, racket straight up and down, and he's meeting the ball at the very back of the ball. So very, very quickly here, he makes a 90-degree rotation with the racket to make contact. This is pronating. The inward rotation of his forearm to face his palm from left to forwards is pronation. And what pronating is, the best way I've ever heard it explained is if you're sitting down right now, I assume you are, watching this video, face your palms towards each other right in front of you so that your palms are facing each other and your hands are parallel to each other, facing each other right in front of you. Now, if you turn your palms, both of them, so that they're facing down towards the ground, that's pronation. And what made that occur was not your wrist, it was your forearm rotating inwards to face your palms down, okay? And that's exactly what Murray is doing here to face his palm towards his target. Now, let's go ahead and go past the point of contact, and we'll see what happens. Right now, he's got a straight line, which we've talked about before, down the back of his hand, down the back of his wrist, his forearm, right down his arm and shoulder. And 2 clicks later, we still have a straight line. Now, what's interesting to point out is his wrist has moved, but it's not flexion. His wrist hasn't snapped. It is released out to the right. You see how there's this kind of curve here in his wrist out to the right? So he no longer has a straight line down his forearm out through the racket. There's a little bit of a curve here. That's called ulnar deviation. The wrist moves back and forth. The best way to explain this is imagine hammering a nail with a hammer. That up and down, if you put your hand on edge, like you're about to karate chop the desk in front of you or whatever's in front of you, and then you close your fist like you're holding a hammer, and then you move your hand up and down, hinge the wrist with your hand still on edge. That is ulnar deviation, the downward flexing of your wrist down towards the desk or down towards the ground or wherever you happen to be. And that type of release does occur on the wrist, but we will not see wrist snap. Here's 1 click further. Again, a straight line down the back of the hand, down the back of the wrist, and down the back of the forearm. And if we move forwards, even a couple of clicks further, look at his palm here. If Andy Murray here were to open his hand and let go of the racket, if he could just kind of freeze this position and open his hand, his palm would be facing now out to the right. So remember where he was several clicks back. Here his palm is facing straight to the left. At contact, his palm is facing straight forwards. And at full release of the racket, his palm is facing straight to the right. So that's a 180-degree rotation of his palm from left to right. That is what people refer to as wrist snap, but is not the wrist snapping. It is the forearm releasing. That's pronation, and that's a big part of creating racket head speed. And by the way, I really believe that it is a big part. You will not see a professional player. You know, there's some things that are stylistic, and there's some things that are different from player to player. You will not see any professional player deviate from this. On edge, on the way up towards the ball, and then facing forwards at the point of contact. You will see a little bit of difference in exactly how far the palm releases after the point of contact. You will see a little bit of difference there, and you'll see a little bit of difference in the angle of the racket face as a result. But every player makes at least a 90-degree rotation and release of the forearm, which helps create racket head speed. And I've heard people say, even other online instructors say that pronation is not super important to your success in creating racket head speed and creating a good high-level serve. And I completely disagree with that. I'm going to go on the record as saying that as well. If it wasn't a big deal, why would every single professional player pronate. That doesn't make any sense at all to say that it doesn't do very much. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at a couple other examples. Here's Ryan Harrison from behind. A couple of quicks earlier. Here's the racket face straight on edge. 2 quicks later, he's making contact. Now look at his palm facing his target, his racket face facing his target. Several quicks later, we see still a straight line down the back of his forearm and wrist as he starts to release the racket. Here we can see a little bit of that curving of the wrist, the ulnar deviation. We can see a little bit of it here as well. That kind of hammer release of the wrist. Straight line down his forearm and wrist. Straight line down his forearm and wrist. And at this point you can see that if he opened his palm would be facing straight to the right. So a 180-degree release of the hand and forearm. And this takes place over a very short period of time. This is a small fraction of a second that we're seeing this full 180-degree release of the racket. And that's what really is the kind of, it's the final link in the kinetic chain. It's the final whip, you know, in the whip. It's the final snap kind of in the whip. If you can imagine a bullwhip being snapped. This is the final release of the racket head. And in my opinion, it has a lot to do with creating power and spin by releasing that racket head in that full 180-degree turn of the hand and forearm out to the right. Now, let's take a look at what this looks like from the side. Here we have Ivanovic. Here's the racket on edge, just a couple of clicks before contact. Contact is made. Notice again, straight up and down. This is an example I didn't use in the previous video, but straight up and down at contact. Really nice frame at contact here. If she were to open her palm here, her palm would be facing forwards, as is her racket. And then a couple of clicks later, look at her palm and her racket facing straight to the right. And again, we see that straight line down the back of her hand, wrist, and forearm. No wrist flexion there, but we do see that ulnar deviation here. You see that's a soft curve here of the hand and wrist. Really nice release there from Ivanovic. All right, next up, here we've got Federer. Here we have just a couple of clicks before contact again, racket on edge. By the way, pretty much without fail, the racket is dead perpendicular. For professional players, when the tip of the racket is pointing straight back towards the back fence and the butt cap is pointing straight forwards towards the other side of the court. That's the pattern that I've been noticing as I've been going through all of this serve footage video. So here's just a tiny bit past contact, racket facing forwards, palm facing forwards. Back here we had the palm facing to the left, racket face facing to the left. And then if we go 2 clicks past that, now the racket face is facing towards the camera to the right, palm is facing to the right. Here we have that curve of the wrist, the ulnar deviation, no wrist flexion. We have a straight line down the back of the arm, forearm and wrist. And then there's that full release, palm facing straight towards me. And, oh, guys got a little sneak peek here. There's Roddick. So here's coming up towards contact. I didn't get a frame pointing straight back, but here's just before that point, on edge, palm facing to the left, racket face facing to the left. Here's contact, racket straight up and down, palm, if he were to open his hand, facing forwards, racket face facing forwards. 2 clicks past that, we're seeing the palm now facing towards the camera, racket face facing towards the camera. A little bit of that curve in the wrist, no flexion. And here again, we can see a straight line down the back of his forearm, hand, and wrist as he releases. So full 180-degree rotation of that racket face. And this is so key, everybody. If you're watching and listening to my voice right now, this is really, really big. And the mistake, I'll tell you the mistake that recreational players make is they open the racket face much, much, much earlier than professional players do. That's the biggest difference in this whole sequence that we're talking about here. The pronation of the forearm, the release of the racket head, it occurs very early. And there isn't this kind of buildup of tension here. Again, this is 2 clicks before contact that Roddick is still perpendicular to the court surface. That's 1/30th of a second. And so he waits till the very last second, till the very last 30th of a second to start that release process. And that builds up tension. And when it's released using the shoulder and the forearm, it creates a lot of speed with the racket head. And that's absolutely key to the success that these players have with the quality of their serves. Okay, so that's really big. All right, I could talk just about that for quite a while, but I want to move on to a couple other things. And the next one that I want to talk about, really just 2 other elements here, is that all of these players, even though you see them rotate their palm out to the right, and you see them release and pronate out to the right with the racket, they all still finish with the racket over on the left side of the body. Now, how is that happening? Let's go ahead and just use Roddick as our first example here. Look at how his chest and his shoulders here are facing to the left. At contact, they're facing forwards towards his target. And his body continues to rotate, and that's what draws the racket over eventually to the left side of his body. So at this point right here, if you're looking from behind, we would see his entire arm and racket on the right side of his body. His core continues to turn, and that's what draws the racket over to the left side of his body. By the way, this does vary a little bit from pro to pro. Some pros actually do finish with the racket on the right side of their body. I don't have a list prepared for you, but one player that tends to do that is Samantha Stosur. She's kind of famous on the WTA side, on the women's side of the tour, for having her kick, topspin serve, and she tends to actually finish her serve with her racket out on the right. There's some ATP players that do it as well. None are coming to mind for me right now, but there are a couple of examples of that. The vast majority finish with the racket on the left, and when I teach my students, that's what I suggest for them as well. Here we see Ivanovic, contact, facing forwards, release out to the right, and then across her body. This is kind of how I follow through with my entire racket all the way back on my left side. See how her shoulders are now facing to the left? Not straight to the left, but enough that her racket has drawn over to her left side. Next example is Harrison. Here we see that release. Remember, I was pointing out Federer and it was Roddick, and how his arm and racket release to the right, and that whole thing is over on his right side as the racket is releasing. He continues to release. Here we see Harrison actually kind of finishing facing downwards, a little bit different here. But the racket head finishes over on the on the left side of the body for the follow through. Does not finish on the right side. Then we have Murray, contact, chest facing forwards, release with the racket on the right side. Then chest, at this point facing a little bit to the left, but entire racket making it over to the left side of his body. And he has a little bit unique finish here with his tossing arm kind of flared out behind him. Not super common. It's kind of a stylistic thing for Murray. But the racket is the main thing I want to point out. And then here's Federer. Contact, release, and follow through. The racket over on the left side. So you see a little bit of difference. Ivanovic and Murray Ivanovic was the furthest with the racket back over here. Federer and Harrison both finished with the racket on the left side of their body, but not, traveling backwards towards the back fence. So there's a little bit of difference here, and there's a little bit of style differences here. It's not essential that you have to finish with the racket in any given position, but let me just say that in general, I very much prefer for my students that they finish with the racket on the left side. Sometimes when players first start learning this pronation and this release of the racket, they kind of get stuck with the racket on the right side of their body, and I very rarely see that work out well. So that's why I'm pointing out here all of these players finishing on the left side, and for those of you watching at home, I strongly recommend that you do that as well. But there's a little bit of leeway in exactly what that looks like, is what I'm getting at. Okay, and then the last thing I want to point out having to do with the follow-through is what to do with the feet. And this is another one of those things that there's just not really any question. Every professional player, I've not seen an example of any professional player not doing it this way. If you've seen one, feel free to let me know. I'd love to see it because I've never seen it happen. You will see every professional player touch down with their front foot. And depending on how aggressively or what type of serve that they're hitting, usually the back foot is kind of up to help keep the body in balance. Usually the core is really leaning and transferring into the court. And so you'll see the back leg kind of flare up and out to hold the player's balance over the front foot, which touches down first into the court. Here we see Roddick in that position already. So here's both feet pushing off, front foot touches down first, and here we see that balanced position, kind of like a baseball pitcher, with the back leg flaring out and the upper body leaning into the court forwards for balance. Notice Roddick, by the way, just a little point of interest, kind of tends to flare that arm out behind him, kind of like Murray as well. Next up, Ivanovic. So here she is pushing up, touching down with that front foot first, leaning into the court, back leg up for balance. Now, if you don't use your lower body a lot right now, you don't have to worry so much about this. Touching down on your front foot will definitely be most natural if you do leave the court at all. If you're not being really aggressive with your serve yet, which is totally fine. If you're just starting to really put together a fundamentally sound motion and trying to get all the pieces together, that's okay. Don't worry about pushing off super aggressively. But you should be touching down first with that left foot if you're right-handed, so with your front foot. But don't worry so much about kind of flaring that back leg up if you're not being really aggressive and really pushing up into the court. And then lastly, here we have Harrison pushing up, touching down with the front foot, and then that forward lean into the court and the back leg up for balance. Ace. All right, so there you have it. Just as a review, wrist snap doesn't happen. There is wrist flexion, but there is no wrist snap. The hinging forwards, there is no wrist flexion forwards, the breaking of the wrist forwards towards the target. What does occur to snap the racket head is pronation, the release of the forearm. That's really the most important thing in this final video of this serve course, is that's so important to understand. And it is a big part of the service motion. So the palm begins facing to the left, faces forwards at contact, finishes facing to the right at full release. Follow through continues across the body on the left side for most professional players, and every professional player finishes landing first on that front foot into the court, gathering their balance with their left leg back. So really important technical elements here. Hopefully you learned a lot, and this clears up some maybe some confusions that you've had in the past about different serve technical elements. Thank you very much for watching. All right, well that does it for video number 5. Again, thank you so much for watching and going through this course with me over the past several weeks. If you have any comments or questions about this video or any of the other ones, please don't forget to leave those right below each of the video players. I'd love to hear from you. Hopefully you've really enjoyed and appreciated these videos and the time and the effort that it took for me to go through and create them. And it's really been a pleasure to really instruct and teach all of you. It's really been a lot of fun for me. It's really something that I just love to do. That's why I got into it in the first place. I loved tennis first, then I found out I really love to teach it as well. And going through this entire process has just really been just a joy for me to go through and present the information, get the feedback, etc., etc. I love this kind of stuff. So thank you so much for going through it with me. I really appreciate it. A really common question has been, can I download these videos? And of course, you can obviously see that these have been YouTube embeds on my website. There's not, a way to just click and download the videos, but it's something that I'm going to work on. These videos have been pretty big, they're all at least 20 minutes in length, and being able to download all of them would be a significant amount of bandwidth. So that's why I've just had them up on YouTube, because it's free for me. It's the easiest way to do it, and it's the most compatible with everybody's computer, etc., etc., etc. It just makes the most amount of sense. But I'm going to work on a way to hopefully make them downloadable. And so look for an email from me about that. Hopefully I can get that set up for all of you that have been asking about that. And speaking of emails, I'm going to continue to let you know about free stuff that I constantly am making available on essentialtennis.com. Just like this serve course, I'm constantly putting out videos. So look for more emails from me, and I really hope that everything I continue to let you know about is just as helpful as what you've seen over these past videos. It's always my goal. Anytime I send an email, is I want you to really find value in it. I'm not going to waste your time. I hate having my time wasted with emails that just really aren't what I'm looking for. I'm never going to do that to you. So look for more stuff coming from me in the near future. You'll be hearing from me, and I really look forward to continuing to work with you on improving your tennis game. So until then, thank you for watching. Please use the Facebook, Twitter, and email buttons right below this video player to share with your friends, your teammates, whoever else that you think might really enjoy this free course, and leave your comments and questions below. So until we talk again, thank you very much for watching, and take care. Best of luck with your tennis.